Hello, everyone, and welcome to our newest podcast for CFOs who are creating regenerative finance organizations in order to use the power of financial capital to create innovation in ESG at scale. Today, I am very pleased to have Karen Parkhill with us today. Karen is the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Medtronic, one of the largest medical device companies in the world, with operations in 150 companies and treating 70 health conditions, including cardiac devices, cranial and spinal robotics, insulin pumps, surgical tools, and patient monitoring systems. Karen serves on the company's executive committee and is responsible for leading Medtronic's global finance organization, including key supporting functions such as treasury, controller, tax, internal audit, investor relations, and corporate strategy and business development. Karen also chairs Medtronic's Sustainability Steering Committee. I'm very pleased to welcome Karen. Karen, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Scott. I'm really thrilled to be here with you. And you gave me a great introduction. So I think I will add that I am very personally committed to everything around ESG and focused on driving that within Medtronic. Medtronic is the leading player in the medical device space. Our founder invented the first pacemaker, and with that also invented the entire medtech industry. And so I'm proud to serve at a company where we are focused on a greater good of alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. And that fits quite neatly into the ESG formula and framework.
It certainly does. And again, thank you very much. And the work that Medtronic does, it's amazing to watch science and the progression of science here over these last years. It's quite stunning. So let's just drop into it real quickly. Tell us how ESG generally fits in the overall Medtronic framework from a governance point of view and from a strategy point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. ESG is really critical to our success as a company, and I would argue critical to any world-class company's success. It's also very importantly ingrained in our mission. So I would say long before ESG was even in focus, more than 60 years ago, our founder and his advisors sat down and wrote our company's mission. And our company's mission has 6 tenets to it, but embedded within each of the tenets are an important focus on ESG. Our first tenet begins with the words to contribute to human welfare. And then it goes on to talk about our purpose of alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. And then our mission also covers the words of us striving without reserve for the greatest possible reliability and quality in our products. And we also talk about recognizing the personal worth of all employees and maintaining good citizenship as a company. And so it was easy for Medtronic to embrace and sign on all things ESG because it was already embedded in the core of who we are. And I would say fast forward to today, not a word of our mission has changed bar one word. Our last CEO added the word all in front of employees. So when we talk about recognizing the worth of all employees, that word was added. And so not a word has changed, but what has happened is we have been very focused on driving ESG even more within our company and outside the walls of our company. Long before I came on board, we established this Sustainability Steering Committee, which I have the privilege and the fortune of chairing, but it is comprised of leaders throughout the company who are focused on the E or the S or the G, along with several of my peers on the executive committee. We meet quarterly and we focus on driving the company toward higher goals and serving higher purposes and setting higher aspirations around ESG.
Karen, when you and I were prepping for this call, I was interested in some of the areas in which you incorporate ESG into your systems, and one of your responses intrigued me in that you haven't actually changed the systems, you've just augmented them, putting ESG factors into that. Can you embellish on that and tell us how are you adding these factors into your internal decision processes?
So we spend less time, I would say, creating something new around tools or frameworks for ESG, and more time aligning where we already are in the company and where the world is around this. So I would start by saying when the United Nations published their 2030 sustainability development goals that were all around achieving peace and prosperity for people and the planet, we spent time aligning our existing focuses and strategies to those goals. So said another way, we focused where we could on making the greatest impact by aligning our focus on good health and well-being, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, and innovation and responsible consumption and production. And we focused on those that aligned with many of the United Nations SDG goals. And then we ultimately simplified that and made it more memorable and repeatable so that we knew that we were focusing on innovation and access, product quality and safety, and inclusion and diversity. And those are memorable, they're repeatable, we all know what we're focused on. And then I would say, in a similar vein, when it comes to capital allocation, we didn't create new tools or new financial analyses. We use the same tried and true financial tools that anyone who has been financially trained knows well. Return on invested capital, IRR, NPV, payback. We use those when we're thinking about and making capital allocation decisions. But we've supplemented those tools with important qualitative factors, many of which are related to ESG. And as we supplement those, we use those traditional tools to inform good decisions, but they're not the ultimate arbiter on making those good decisions. Those good decisions are made with both the qualitative and the quantitative factors that we look at.
Then do you take some of that, Karen, and create around it a new set of key performance indicators or objectives and key results, or is it do you change the scorecarding at all, either quantitatively or maybe more probably qualitatively?
As we focused on those key goals that I talked about that aligned with the United Nations goals, we have established KPIs and metrics for each of those that we are tracking, monitoring, talking about in meetings, working to ensure that we reach those KPIs and those goals, even when they're long-term. For example, we set a carbon neutral goal by 2030. We're focused on ensuring that we achieve those goals. And by ensuring that we achieve them, it means that we need to track and monitor and know how we're going to achieve them.
That's interesting to be able to frame that up. And I know in our conversation the other day, and I know CFOs are thinking about this, which is, let's say that this begins to happen in our companies. Now we have to communicate it out to various stakeholder groups. That implies integrated reporting or at least dual reporting. Can you talk about what Medtronic does on the reporting side? Engage in any form of public advocacy that Medtronic sort of.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit and went mute, Scott, but I think you were talking about how we drive integrated reporting for our investors and other stakeholders. And we do issue annually an integrated report on all things ESG related. And we align that with the release of our proxy statement. And the reason we align it is because investors are often deep diving on us around the time that they're voting on our proxy statements. And as they do those deep dives, our integrated report and important things that we disclose in that report are fundamental to how investors view us and sometimes how they vote on our proxy. So we align the release of the integrated report with our proxy statement. But we know that investors are using our disclosure to make important investment decisions. And because of that, we have upped our game or increased our focus around ensuring the accuracy, almost auditability of what we disclose in that integrated report. For those in the financial world, you know, our disclosure was totally changed and upended with the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation that was passed in the United States decades ago. And I can tell you that we have very concerted focus on ensuring financial disclosure accuracy because of that SOX legislation. And we're taking an almost SOX-like approach when we think about what we disclose in our integrated report. We've also chosen to roll up our sleeves and invest time and knowledge with the varying bodies that are trying to shape and standardize the myriad of disclosure that's out there around ESG. There is no single recognized body of approved disclosure or framework for approved disclosure around ESG. And as a result, there are many entities out there that are asking for different kinds of exposure, different tweaks on how you disclose certain things. And as a result, you know, many companies could just spend much of their time spinning heads and spinning wheels trying to disclose things in a very different way for various metrics. And so we have spent time with the World Economic Forum as they work to collaboratively shape stakeholder capitalism metrics. And we've also spent time with SASB as they've worked to drive their standards. And we think that's time well spent because we're helping give a company voice when we're shaping those standards. And so right now, today, we align our content of disclosure with the GRI standards, the SASB standards, as well as the Task Force on Climate-related Disclosure standards. And hopefully, you know, we'll have even more alignment among companies so that others can cross-compare all of us on how we're doing against all things ESG related.
That's one of the hopes that we all have, is that we create a set of standards that look and feel like the financial standards that we have. And at Integrate 21, we also work with the SASB and A4S and all the reporting groups. Karen, you touched on a subject that we are going to be talking about at the conference, which is assurance and what's happening in that whole area. We'll also be talking at the conference on what the SEC is doing regarding compliance and changing the reporting structures there. So people interested in that, that's happening in November at Fordham University on November the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Karen, real quick in finishing this up, again, I've appreciated so much, and our viewers will be too when we show this. Tell us one thing that you're the most proud of, maybe on a more personal note related to the subject that you've done at Medtronic.
Well, thank you for the question. I would have to say that I am proud of the work, particularly around inclusion and diversity, that we've been doing at Medtronic. And I very humbly and proudly serve as the executive sponsor of our Pride Employee Resource Group, which we made a resource group globally across the company just a year and a half ago. And within a year and a half, the tremendous strides that we've made as a Pride network have been amazing. We now have over 6,000 members globally in more than 40 countries. As a company, we're taking public stands on policies across the globe, like the HRC's business statement on anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. That's just one, for example. And the the amount of energy and of inclusiveness that we're driving in the company as a result of standing behind some of these important things and creating an inclusive environment where our employees can bring their true, authentic selves to work has been palpable. And so I'm most proud of that. We have a long way to go still, but I'm really thrilled with the progress that we've made in the last 18 months.
I love that. That is powerful to help people reach their own human potential. That's just square center. Finally, if there's one thing that you could advise other CFO peers of yours that they could do that they may not be doing to address this issue of ESG innovation and how they move capital around, what would it be?
I'd say the one thing is focus and have a true passion and drive around driving better ESG, and choose things that already matter to your company that you can drive even further. There is nothing better than setting the right tone at the top of the company. And when that tone is set, it's amazing how exponential it becomes with the rest of the employee and the workforce rallying around the cause.
Karen, I couldn't agree with those last sentiments more. We believe in our 5-pillar framework that the number one thing has to be the governance. Without governance, it isn't core, and therefore things can change over time and the other things become weak. I want to thank you today for your time, for your insights, for everything that you're doing at Medtronic, and the stuff that you're doing personally. That is important, that we can contribute in those ways. So very much appreciated your efforts today. I'd like to thank everybody who is listening to this. This is something that's a passion project for us to help move capital flows at speed and at scale through the CFO, because all of you hold the purse strings. I invite you to look at the Integrate Conference website for the conference coming up at Fordham University Gabelli School of Business this November 8th, 9th, and 10th. It will be live, but also hybrid. So you can join virtually or join physically. With that, I wish everybody a wonderful day. Thank you.